welcome back to DisruptWell Summit 2020. I should get the dates right. Mike Seminary has over 35 years of business development and client relations management experience in engineering, radio broadcasting, and related fields. He also served for 10 years on the Bismarck City Commission, 4 of those years as mayor. You'll find Mike's full bio at DisruptWell.com. So Mike, you've disrupted. Now what?
Well, thank you so much, Beth, and good morning to all of you. It's great to be here. I'm going to get up and out of the chair here in a minute. So you've disrupted, now what? That wasn't my theme. It was actually Jay Schuler's. Jay's a dear friend of mine, former commissioner of the Department of Commerce, lifelong entrepreneur, incredibly successful guy. But because of COVID, things came up and he wasn't able to participate today. So I filled in, and that doesn't mean I'm capable of filling in his shoes. I'm just going to step in and talk about this topic maybe from a different angle. And I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of marketing, because marketing it rules the world when it comes to almost everything that we do, particularly when it's commerce or business related. It's all about the marketing. And here's what marketing really is, by the way. I have to pause and say I want to thank Daryl Nitsky from Congressman Armstrong's office for joining us today. He looks great in that mask too, by the way. Here's what marketing really is. It's everything we say, we do, we measure, that we promote, that we brand for the purposes of having someone, an audience, consumers potentially, interact with us or not. And how good you are at it is what I'm going to talk about today. And I want to start from this perspective first. Oh, by the way, when you're marketing, the audience are vast. It could be investors, it could be your employees, it could be the boss, it could be your competition, it could be your team members, it could be a lot of different people that you're trying to have interact with your company, and how well you do it or not is going to be the telltale sign of how long you'll be in business or how successful you'll be. Back to this slide. For the last 4 years, this is the core planning team that's responsible for this summit. And I just want to take a minute to recognize them, even though Beth did that as well. And really, Beth should be on the slide as well now, because the last 2 years, she's been a critical part of this team. But again, Evan and Janya, Dr. Carl Sovak, Marlo Anderson, Deb, the fun, good-looking, smart, everybody wants to be with Seminary, Deb Esslinger, Kevin Kading, and then from Houston Engineering, my employer, Connie Gullison and Kristin Michaels. They've done an exceptional job. The last 2 people on that slide, my current boss, Jeff Ledoux, the CEO of Houston Engineering, my previous boss and employer, who used to be the CEO of Cadmus, Lee & Jackson, KLJ. Were it not for those 2 individuals, we wouldn't be having this summit. Because what happened a little over 4 years ago, I invited Niles to come in and talk to our company about how he saw the future of marketing in the civil engineering business. Because he, very, very successful at that. And I wanted him to tee it up from this perspective. Because we had been reading some of the same information, like Race Against the Machines by Brynjolfsson and McAfee. I wanted Niles to share with us how he saw emerging technology impacting what we do for a living. And here's what he said, I'll paraphrase. Here's what he said that day. Were it not for the requirement for a human being to stamp engineering plans, in other words, the engineer that's a certified engineer to stamp the plans, a lot of you will be out of a job. Because computers with algorithms, talking to other computers and algorithms, they're going to create that work that you do. And the only reason you'll have a job is because you have to stamp it. The looks on the faces that day told me, man, he just struck a real responsive chord. As a result of that, Jeff Ledoux and I talked about, let's put this summit together, and he was the first one to be willing to financially support this summit. And we're not, Jeff, I know you're watching. Thank you so much. Were it not for Jeff Niles, we probably wouldn't be here today. I want to talk about a little bit about marketing and the history of marketing before I tee up the 6 things that I think are important that we all should be doing when it comes to marketing. I'm not going to do any fancy presentation here, bells, whistles, video, nothing. I'm just going to talk to you. The marketing areas that we need to understand because it's pretty important. The first one was the simple trade area. From the beginning of time, Adam and Eve, to about 1860s, just before the Industrial Revolution. pretty much people were consuming stuff that they produced, and then they might have shared it with some other, so they could go out and be a carnival barker, stand next to a cave and sell it to somebody coming out of the cave or some street corner somewhere, or next. That's generally what happened. A little bit of mercantile and commerce was started to be created because those people that would take the leftovers from the families that were producing it, they went out and started what we call today commerce. And then there's the mass production from 1860, about 1920. That's when very basic production systems were created, and all the one-off items that were staples, if you will, were starting to be produced. Pretty low-cost inputs. And so it was a hat, a boot, a shirt, your pants, pencils, nails, whatever it was. And it started to get fairly competitive, and that started to drive innovation and change. And then it really started to change significantly from the 1920s to the 1940s when we had the sales era. Well, production skills and techniques became far more advanced. It became far more competitive globally. And all of a sudden, it was required to be successful. If you wanted to stay in business, you had to learn how to sell this stuff. You had to be able to build relationships. You had to master the ability to sometimes sell something to somebody that didn't even know that they needed, right? And that started to change things real significantly. Al Capone was really good at, by the way, selling stuff to people they didn't even know that they needed, and he was real active during that sales era. Things really started to change in the 40s and 60s when marketing departments were created in significant businesses. And if there was one person and company that probably had more influence in that in the late 60s, it was Mr. Honda, when he came over here and started selling cars. But back to marketing departments, all of a sudden, everyone in companies had some kind of marketing responsibility. You were the brand of your company. And as competition became more aggressive, sometimes brutal, by the way, the better the marketing department was, the more successful you were going to be. Back to Honda, now in that period from the 60s to the 90s. What happened during that period of time, automotive manufacturers from the United States owned automotive manufacturing. They owned it. The Japanese came over here, and primarily led by Mr. Honda. They sold crappy cars in the beginning. They leaked oil, they smelled funny, they were light, you could pick up and move them if they weren't working, by the way. But he did something that nobody else was doing prior to this. Prior to this, you bought what we sold. If you didn't like it, we'll sell it to somebody else. He started interviewing and was concerned about customer satisfaction. He's probably the guy that created customer satisfaction. And marketing companies understood that. They were well developed. They developed plans, systems, sales techniques, branding, advertising campaigns, very sophisticated, based on customer satisfaction. They actually went out and visited with people and say, if you don't like it, what don't you like? What would you like to see in it that's not there? How much would you be willing to pay for these new inputs into the vehicles or whatever it might be? And that started to change commerce forever, because now the customer was in the driver's seat, sorry for the pun, but they were now ruling. Prior to that, we kind of didn't care. You either bought it or you didn't. We always found somebody else that would buy it, right? Well, what happened next? When that became relationship marketing. It was always relationship marketing, most of them kind of crappy, because this is what we make, this is what we sell. If you don't like it, lump it. That's kind of how everybody looked at the commerce of marketing. But that all changed in the 1990s when guys like Seth Godin said, if you really want to own something, dig into people's tribes. And don't just be concerned about somebody being a satisfied customer. You now want to focus on customer loyalty. Because if you can get customers to be loyal to what it is you're marketing, whatever it is you're branding, whatever it is you're selling, he didn't necessarily say you're going to be rich, but you are going to rock the world. And he's absolutely right, because when you focus on someone's tribes, they're going to tell all their followers, they're going to be evangelists for you, and all of a sudden, you can lower your input costs in terms of marketing and advertising, potentially, because they're going to do that for you. Well, what's changed now? It's social, it's mobile, it's digital, but it's still all about the relationship. That's never, ever going to change. We heard some people talking about that earlier today. It's still all about the relationship. So I want to focus now on the 6 basics that have always mattered. They matter more now than maybe ever. And I learned the first one from my father. My father was a fabulously successful sales guy, and I wanted to go into sales. And I've been in sales one way or another really since 1970, but for a real living since about the mid-70s. So I said, Dad, I want you to train me. So he took me on this crappy fishing boat, fishing in the middle of Turtle Lake, where the family cabin was, where my sister and her husband still have that cabin. I hate fishing. I've never liked fishing. I fish in a supermarket or I fish in a deli. My dad takes me, you know, Cam, Turtle Lake, there's perch maybe in there, some other fish where Dad would put a piece of corn on the hook, cast, and we'd wait, and nothing happened. So he started teaching me about sales that day. We were out there 3 or 4 hours. He'd say something to me, I'd talk, 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 talk. He'd say something to me, I'd talk, 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 talk. And all of a sudden he said, well, we're done for the day, son. We go back into the store. I said, we're done, really? He said, yeah, son, you know, we were out there about 4 hours. You talked a lot. You didn't ask me one question. And son, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So you got to ask questions. You got to listen for important information. So I learned that day from my dad, hey, one of the basics is you got to listen and you got to ask good questions. It's always been that way, and it's always going to be that way. And then some years later, I'm at a meeting, maybe in this building, by the way, and then United States Senator Byron Dorgan was here, and he got here late, and that day he blamed it on Northwest Airlines. He said, I'm late because Northwest Airlines, used to be Northwest, they're not dependable. You can never put that in the bank that they're going to leave at 10:45 and I'm going to be here at 11. You just can't. That's why they're Northwest Airlines. So what I learned from him that day is you got to be dependable. So if you're listening, asking good questions, learning about people, and then you're dependable, you got something going, right? Well, then I've learned something from Ned Beatty, who made himself famous, by the way, in 1970 from a very, very interesting movie called Deliverance. But what I really learned from him was his 2007 movie, The Shooter. So he's in, I won't go into how it ended for him that day, but I'm going to talk about, here's this United States Senator that he's portraying. And he's in this cab, and he's got a drink in his hand, and he's talking about the truth. And he says, the truth is what I say it is. And I said, you know, that's kind of apparent today, by the way, in Washington, right? The truth is what I say it is. No, the truth is what it is. And we, consumers, we, evangelists, we all want to know what the truth is, whether we like it or not, whether it hurts or it helps. So you got to ask questions, you got to listen, you got to be dependable, and you got to be truthful. If you're going to have these things now called engagements with potential clients, not just connecting with, but your engagements, they want to know that what's truth, what's real, right? And then I learned from my previous employer, Jim Lackaduck, when I ran the radio stations for him. He had this sales system. In the system was this tool called the Tell Me, Sell Me. He invented this in the late 70s. 27 questions you had to memorize, 27. It was all about the person, the vendor, the merchant, their employees. What were their best sales? What were their best movers? What were the dogs that they shouldn't have anyway? What did they think of their competition? In the early 80s and late 70s, he even said, what's the most important civic concern for you? He thought that was important to know that kind of stuff. So if you learned how to ask those questions, memorize them, that was now data. That was now research. You could turn that into analytics. You could really do something significant for these people. So if you listen, you are dependable, you are honest, and you ask good questions, you got something going. Lastly, Milton Teagle. Anybody know who Milton Teagle is? How about if I say Milton Teagle Simmons? How about if you Google aerobics guru? You're not going to come up with Dr. Ken Cooper, who invented aerobics from the Cooper Clinic. You're going to come up with Richard Simmons, the Liberace of aerobics, the dancing to the oldies guy, most flamboyant guy in exercise history ever, right? He was a franchise. And why was he so successful? Other than he was smiling all the time. he was so memorable. He was just really memorable. So you got something going if you're in the marketing business. If you're listening, you're getting information, you're dependable, you're honest, you got good research and data because you're asking good questions, and you're a little memorable. You gotta be memorable, right? Who buys stuff when people aren't memorable? By the way, 15 years ago right now, Jeff Bezos created Amazon Prime. I'm still not a member. And that's a whole nother story for another time. I want to close with this slide. I really started learning about marketing in my second rock and roll band 50 years ago. This is the band. This is part one. 4 of these guys, including me, are still living. And this was a shoot where we decided we got to go out and get pictures of ourselves to put on the posters that we put where we're playing, right? The time and the date and how much. Here are 5 guys that got in this little Dodge van, crammed with equipment, traveled 250 miles or something to go make some music. And it was like a family. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's really, really rough. And sometimes it got kind of ugly. That's just the way it is, right? But what we always reflect on now and reflected on then is we had fun. You gotta have fun. You gotta focus on the fun. Even during these times like this, you gotta focus on the fun. So if you're listening, you're getting good information, you're dependable, you're honest, you got really, really brutally honest with people when you're connecting with them, you're getting good information, you're really memorable. You don't have to dress quite like Richard Simmons, but you're having fun. That's how the relationships begin. And that's what marketing has always been about. That's what it is today. And that's what it's going to be like into the future. So let the relationships begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. And it leads us right into our next presentation, which is all about disruptive marketing. So Charlie Ricketts is the founder and CEO of Dakota Solar Energy. The company was established in 2019 and has become the state's leading expert in solar energy. Charlie has vast experience in the solar energy industry, dating back to 2014 when he left North Dakota to work for Solar City and Tesla in both Arizona and Texas as a top performing energy advisor and regional energy manager. Kristin Hedger serves as the 3rd generation of leadership with Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing. KMM is a manufacturing company founded to provide jobs in small communities in North Dakota. With a world-class customer base of commercial aerospace and defense systems, KMM has excelled in providing quality opportunities for farm and ranch farm families to supplement their incomes and opportunities for young people to work in the most competitive manufacturing global supply chain. Kristin has a deep appreciation for the business and for what small business can do for communities and families in North Dakota. You'll find both of their full biographies on DisruptWell.com. So Charlie is here with us today, and Kristin is joining us remotely. Marlo Anderson will moderate the discussion.
Well, welcome everybody, and happy National Coffee Day to you. So we have to do the toast, and that's right, there we go. That's your coffee for the day, Mike?
It's over there.
Okay. Charlie, Mike, Kristin, thank you so much for being here today. So we're gonna start off, Mike, we know a little bit about you now, since you had that amazing talk, by the way. That was a fun setup for what we're gonna be getting into. Kristin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. As was referenced, I'm 3rd generation with Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing. Some of my background is I've had the good fortune to work for Senator Dorgan, who Mike referenced in his conversation. So I worked for him for around 6 years, and then went back as our family business grew to now have factories in 3 locations in Killdeer, Dickinson, Hedger, and it's an honor to be here with you. And I think that our company, I'd like to kind of touch on how we sort of disrupted in the late 80s, which was a very similar situation to what we're seeing now. in the late 80s, I mean, it wasn't a global pandemic, obviously, but it was very bad for North Dakota in that we had a drought year. The price of oil was down, and it was just an incredibly bad situation for our hometown of Killdeer. And so my grandparents worked, and I was fortunate enough to be present and living with them at the time, so I was able to witness it. But my grandfather thought perhaps we could create some labor-intensive sub-assembly manufacturing jobs in the aerospace industry, which is an industry that he kind of intended to sort of retire from, but he had an extensive background in working for Honeywell, working with NASA, and some other really prominent companies. And so the goal was sort of to work to provide those manufacturing jobs to provide healthcare and other stability for the region. And that's another benefit, I think, of manufacturing. But one of the challenges that he encountered when he went to the more tier one prime contractors, such as the Boeing company, was that North Dakota wasn't really as well known. The heartland was kind of, usually the coastal regions were sort of looked upon for reference of manufacturing. So the difficulty was sort of to get a good reputation and really market ourselves, as Mike has kind of highlighted, in a way to highlight what makes us unique. And one of those things is our authenticity. If we can't do something, we'll be honest and forthright about it, and we'll say, what is it that we need to do to acquire those skill sets and accommodate the solutions that you're looking for as a customer. And so that's something that I think really helped us reach beyond the boundaries of the Red River Valley and the Badlands, and again, provide those opportunities for young people and the stability through hardship. And now we find ourselves in a similar situation, much like everybody else in the world, and certainly the aerospace industry in specific is challenged. But I think that the North Dakota innovative spirit just that we inherently have by having to come up with solutions. We've been disruptive since our statehood, right? From the outset, we've always had to come up with solutions and be solutions oriented. And I think that that's something that we've brought to the table. And in the way of, I guess, my background, I've kind of tried to pursue ways to hone those skill sets. So I've pursued studies in public affairs, political science, and theological ethics of all things, which I guess, if anything, I guess you learn how to pray through hard times. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about the background of myself, our company, some of the perspectives generally that we had to have coming forward, and some of the lessons learned that we've had that we're hoping to implement and we have looked to implement this year through these hardships. So I look forward to having this conversation and any questions that may come up.
You truly look forward to this conversation. That's fantastic. Thank you, Kristin, and thank you for being a disruptor in North Dakota and changing the image, actually, of how people look at North Dakota. So we thank you for that. Charlie, you're next.
Thanks, Marlo. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, Mike and Deb, for hosting and really just the hospitality. I really appreciate this. When I received that call initially from Mike to speak at this, I really wasn't sure exactly what to expect, but I have basically put myself in a position to be of service. Anytime anybody has any interest in learning about solar power, I'm gonna pitch my widget, right? So I'm really thankful to be here, and I really appreciate the name. I really do. And then after hearing you share about marketing and the gracious lady from AT&T, I mean, I've just learned a whole lot and I've absorbed a lot. I was telling Marlo earlier that I don't really prepare for anything. I just kind of like go to the next event. And even last night, I'm a night owl. I'm usually up till 2:30 in the morning. I do some of my best thinking in the evening. And even last night, I was like trying to prepare, like, well, what am I gonna wear? What am I gonna say? I just let it all go. I was like, I'm just gonna show up. I'm gonna listen, right? I'm gonna observe. And I think really that has been kind of a key fundamental for me in understanding how to communicate in the market. And really just know the audience, right? Whether it's me and a homeowner talking about solar power, or me and a corporation, or here at a hosted event, that I'm grateful to be a part of. A little about my background. I mean, wow. I've been disrupted since I was like 6 years old, right? I just kind of checked out of the whole thing and unplugged. I was a bored kid in school, right? I never got suspended. I always knew the line. I tested the line all the time, right? I left high school. I just didn't see the reason, and I just went out there and just did stuff. And I've had like really one W-2 really my entire life, and I lucky enough to get hooked up with a cool company called Solar City, and ultimately Tesla, and that's it. And that you know, that's a business. As I was listening to Mike share his experience in marketing, which is vast and really profound to me, I was thinking about Tesla and how they actually don't market. Like there's zero marketing that came out of Solar City and Tesla. Tesla does not market. And I'll tell a quick funny story. So, you know, it's kind of a proud moment to be an employee of Tesla. And everybody who has Facebook, you know, we're all looking forward to that day we can go in and we can change our employment status, you know, promotions and things like that. And Elon got into this Twitter war with an individual one time, and this guy basically like poked at Elon and his ability to rely on things like social media to market his product. And within 15 minutes, Tesla's site on Facebook was shut down. Like, I lost my employment status on Facebook, right? And we're all freaking out, like, what? You know, that's just how things were done, right? And I think what I've learned in business and in marketing is that, you know, kind of what Mike was sharing on, like, just step up and go to the next event, right? Take responsibility for your actions and try to do the next right thing. I was grateful to have an opportunity to lead a team in Texas when Tesla moved into Texas, and we were hiring a bunch of people. I was hiring a bunch of people, and we had to keep kind of that company motto, right? And the company motto with Tesla is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And in Texas, we just took that and we just basically added, don't be an asshole and do the right thing. and everyone seemed to do okay. We had an appropriate book of business and people were generally happy.
We have a 6-second delay, so you're okay.
Well, thanks, Marlo. I appreciate it.
You bet.
I'm really looking forward to being here. I'm excited. You know, I really am. And one thing I will share that, you know, in just listening to today is, and I hope to contribute, is that there's an overarching, maybe just a quick zoom out on everything that's been discussed. And the one thing that we will need and that we rely on currently, even just to have this event, is the power, right? That source of energy. So I'm excited to have that conversation because, you know, again, I have no formal education whatsoever, but I know one thing and I get up and I do it every single day with every breath I take, and that's to convey the proper message about solar power, what it can do for us, and eliminate a few preconceived notions along the way. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Charlie, and I love your passion.
Thanks.
I love it. So, I may not even refer to this because we're just going to have a conversation. Sometimes no marketing is the best marketing, and I can attribute to that as well. You know, with National Day Calendar, we've never paid a penny for marketing. You know, Tesla's the same way. But what we have done, and I'm guessing Tesla, is that we create scenarios and build ambassadors around the world that love to share our stuff, right? So it's like to me, it's like the bar in New York City that has no sign on it, and you got to go through a dungeon, and you got to get over there. And when you show up there, it's the busiest place in town. So can you talk to that about that a little bit, and maybe Mike too? About the no marketing could be the best marketing there is?
Yeah, I think the basis to that, to be able to pull that off, to execute that, and I don't think that this happens day one in some cases.
And not for most companies, probably.
It's certainly not. I mean, you know, look, I own the business, so I have to market, right? And I have these little things that have to go on. I got a friend of mine I've known for 20 years, and he's kind of the Google wizard, and he knows how to pull the strings, right? Like, I pay to put my information in front of people's faces, because that's the beast in which, you know, today's marketing sometimes works. Now, I would like to not have to, right? And it's got nothing to do with the budget. It's the end result, the direct result. I would much rather have Mike Seminary contact me and say, Charlie, I got a buddy. He's interested in solar power. I couldn't think of anyone else. That's what I want. I want that rather than knowing that it's a lead flow that I have to account for on the front end financially, and then watch that, money tree kind of grow and dissipate and make these changes and pull the levers. Solar City was a referral-based company, and they became very quickly the largest residential solar supplier in the world, and then easily dominated the commercial space when they decided they were ready for that scale. And Tesla, to a degree, I mean, they just build the coolest product in the world, and they do incentivize on a fiscal manner with their clients, which I think is appropriate, because I would much rather give $500 to a client of mine who I've earned the right to have him mention my name to a friend or family member than I would to spend $1,200 on the Google and the social medias and expect to get a return on that investment easily.
Yep. So Mike, building off Charlie, right? So this really, to me, goes back to shareable moments and customer satisfaction. So can you talk about that a little bit and how you can change that into a marketing scenario?
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate what Kristin and Charlie shared. I'm going to take maybe a different approach, going back to things that are memorable and that people find of value. I've been told that a lot of people learned this in high school. I don't know that I can say I have the personal experience, but so some person would go buy a keg of beer, and they would go to some, place outside of town, and shortly thereafter they learned, I'm like 10 kegs short. That was before cell phones. That was, and nobody was allowed to use the phone. But the word got out. And again, I don't know that I was ever at one of those, but
It's like zip to
it's
that.
no different today when there's something that person has an interest in and they know of it, they hear of it, they share it with somebody else. It's all about the shareable moment, whatever it is. And if people have an interest in that, they can become, part of the deal. In the commerce side of it, I think maybe the key is, and this is always hard, is when something is trending that had been kind of a fad, it's at that moment, and it's hard to identify that, right? You get lucky. If you can be at that time, and you have, as Seth Godin says, the tribes that follow you or you can tap into, you can do something pretty important, something meaningful, something really memorable.
But you can actually predict some of the trending things nowadays. Are we going to have a Super Bowl next year?
Yeah.
Are we going to have a tornado or a bad weather event next year, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? What can you do with your company to prepare for those if you're in those spaces, right? You could have stuff on your website that's a blog that you've written about, and then as soon as there's a tornado someplace, you can release that blog back to the wild again, and then you will actually be part of that trending moment. So I think there's ways that you can actually prepare yourself for those trending topics. You're not always going to get that. I mean, nobody would have guessed in a million years that yesterday there would be this news story that came out that said Trump paid $750 in taxes yesterday, and that immediately became the #1 trending topic. But you can maybe prepare yourself if you're in a financial space with taxes, that maybe you can share that information about how he only spent $750 last year in taxes, right? So
if I could add this, kind of probably help for Kristin.
Yes.
So I think two takeaways is that, one, you have to be flexible. You have to be really flexible.
Yes.
And then second, in terms of vision and being somewhat of a risk taker, I learned this from Niles Hushka. Niles never believed he was the CEO of an engineering company. He believed he was the CEO of a company that had, whatever the number was at the time, 350 really talented people. And if something changed, he had to turn on a dime. He had to be able to redirect all those people and keep as many of them employed as possible. So it's about the timing, the flexibility, and some vision.
Right. All right, Kristin, I know this is probably not your wheelhouse, but maybe you have some insight here that maybe we're not seeing. So share your knowledge.
Well, I mean, I think to touch on flexibility, of course, is key. So, I mean, Mike is there. And a lot of times you can see opportunity in these, especially these times of hardship. Some of, there's some opportunities to take on new platforms where you're potential competitors may be struggling or maybe being acquired, or there could be other challenges. The other thing I would reference along with what Charlie said is, I think North Dakota, if we're talking about in North Dakota specific, we can partner with our other companies that can be synergistic. Years back, we worked to form something called the Dakota Defense Alliance, and we had a number of small to medium-sized companies partnering along with North Dakota State University and UND to capture opportunities in the broad area announcement field coming out of DoD and DOE. But one of the things that was neat is because we are small, it's easy for us to integrate and communicate and see strengths, such as like Ideal Aero in Grand Forks, all the way across the state from us, has test capabilities that far surpass what we have at KMM. There's other companies that exist that as you move forward, you can tap those and really grow and obtain and field contracts and keep that dollar footprint in the state, which is very exciting. But it's also an opportunity to work and advance our reputation with other states, such as Texas, and work with some of those companies, such as Lockheed Martin, or even, Tesla is also very visible there as well. Sorry, somebody came in the door. But that's another realm that I think that we're unique, that we can offer, and that we can shape and brand our reputation as that authentic, rugged state that has small to medium-sized companies that are looking to pursue and continuously advance the state of the art and be disruptive in that regard as well.
All right, thank you, Kristin. So I have a list of hypotheticals, and this is going to be looking into the future a little bit. So, and maybe not so far. Some of the stuff is happening right now, but I want you to think about how a year from now, 5 years from now, that we will be using this technology for marketing. Okay, so every morning I go to a coffee shop. And of course, my phone knows that I go to a coffee shop, just like your phone knows I go to a coffee shop. And as you know, whether you like that scenario or not, we're not even going to get into that debate today, but it's happening. I mean, it's amazing. I lost my phone. I didn't have a way to track it with a GPS, and asked me if I wanted to know the last place it was. Well, then I pulled up the map of all the places I've been in the last 5 years. I was shocked. Just this crisscross across the entire country. And I'm like, this is crazy. This has been going on for this long already. So the people that are tracking us know our habits, right? So how do you leverage that? Is there a way that I can create a marketing play to maybe persuade me to go to another coffee shop in the morning, or maybe value add? Marla, you need to eat that muffin every morning, so when I walk into this place, because my phone already knows this, what is it that my phone can do, or what Google or Apple or whoever, Amazon, can do to encourage me to buy a muffin? Kristin, you're first on this one.
Well, on that one, I'll kick it up. I think that basic enough, you have these loyalty programs where you kind of get little stars or for whatever you purchase your cookies or coffee, but that's kind of basic. I would like to highlight one thing that I think was kind of unique during this COVID crisis. I had a friend of mine who owned a wine shop called Grape Juice. And what they did, because, obviously people weren't allowed to go in and have wine tastings in person due to social distancing. So they took advantage of technology and branding and social media to have virtual wine tastings, such that you could sign up. They could have the wine of whatever was going to be sampled at that given Friday or whatever, along with the tasting notes, and then you could take advantage of Facebook Live initially, and then now they're moved on to other technology platforms. But that has created a sense of tremendous loyalty, a great opportunity to keep on with sales, and I thought it demonstrated a lot of ingenuity in the way of being solutions oriented. I think you could do that with other realms as well. But I thought that was just kind of a neat thing I would touch on. I'm sure Charlie and Mike probably have things to hop on to that as well.
No,
but yeah, that's some initial thoughts.
That's cool. Mike? How would you market to me? How are you going to sell me a muffin now?
I'm the wrong guy to ask, and you know that, because I'm at the point in my life where I'm starting to go Ted Kaczynski, but not the bombing, right? I'm trying to get when I retire at the end of the year, I'm going to probably go off the grid.
Okay.
So, because I'm at a point where it's a great question, by the way, but I am the wrong guy to ask, because I'm probably going to go here and try to avoid as much of it as possible.
Okay, that's fine. Charlie, you have any ideas? Are you going to sell me a muffin?
Yes, I am, but it's not going to be my work directly. I have a great friend. He lives in Fargo, and he's this marketing wizard and knows how to pull those strings. And I'll just leave that up to him, right? Like I'm going to leave that to the guys who just manage that space really well, right? Because I don't want to get into the throttling game of trying to figure out how do I capture that? Because it's a little icky, right? Just to even think about. And I think part of it for me is, I'm mindful that that's how it works, right? And I'm going to speak for myself here to a degree. But I think generally speaking, and I think everyone would admit this if we took a quick account in our daily lives, is that we have to look at ourselves for this too, because we're becoming gobblers of everything, right? Like we're just out there consuming all of it, right? And I haven't figured it all out, but like, shirts. Okay, I have one shirt and I have like 18 of them. Exact same shirt, same maker, same size, same cut. It doesn't bode well when I have things like, coronavirus keeping me close to the kitchen and I enjoy a little bit extra cookies because I have no other option, right? But I have not actually had to go online and like shop for shirtwear, right? Now I have recently looked for new shoes because I do like a new pair of shoes from time to time. And I'm telling you, they are all over me, right? Like I can't open up social media or Google without having that in front of me. Now, from my vantage point, knowing the other side of this, I kind of look at this and I'm like, okay, all right, I see how this is going, right? Like, I understand that. And I think if we were to just kind of tune down a little bit in like how we consume and the amount of things that we consume, I think we would solve a lot of problems for humanity. But I also think like it would kind of help kind of curtail this, why Google is as big as they are and why Facebook is as big as they are. I cannot help leaving this without having shared that Tesla is a lot of things, right? And ultimately, there's a trend that took place when they started gathering data from the cars that were traveling. Google, Facebook, and these Waymo, they were all out there trying to gather data. They got out, right? Because they knew, like, we're not winning this one, right? And the value in today's tech, it's all about data, right? Data, that's it. And so when Tesla's got all these cars being deployed that are monitoring everything, I've had the privilege of having a couple of these Teslas, right? And I'll tell you, it's really amazing to know that this car will recall the speed bump that I hit one time, and I went in and hit a button and asked it to remember where the speed bump was, and the car automatically raised its suspension from that point forward to infinity every time I got to that place, GPS location, right? That's the nature of what we're looking at is trackability, right?
Yep. But don't you think, now again, I'm not gonna get into the debate of whether this is good or bad for us. This is just what's happening, right? So I'm going to skip a couple of things here because you brought it up. So AI and marketing, it is huge right now. Has everybody on the panel watched The Social Dilemma? Okay. So Kristin, have you watched that program yet? It's on Netflix right now. I highly recommend that people watch this show because you'll get a better understanding of the dynamics behind what's going on. It's going to scare you a little bit, but it's also going to help you understand what's going on. So I'm like you, right? And I have this thing about, I mention I like Frito-Lay corn chips to Mike. Mike says, I hate Frito-Lays. I like Doritos instead, right? And I swear my phone is listening to me because the next time I pick it up, it has a Frito-Lay's commercial right there. And I swear the next time Mike picks his phone up, there's a Doritos ad right there. Or somebody who wants to compete with you with that. Our devices are listening to us all the time. And what's scary about this is our TVs listen to us as well. And many people don't know that. And what's going to happen as we move forward is the commercials that we watch on television are going to be picked to Mike's Doritos. So they know that Mike likes Doritos, and all of a sudden there's another chip company that comes out and says, hey, you like Doritos? You're going to love brand X, right? That's where we're going with all this stuff. Do you like the fact that these marketers are going to be actually marketing to your likes, or do you prefer just to have this wanton, you're watching TV and then you got to go through 3 minutes of commercials of cars and everything else that you really don't have a lot of interest in? I'm curious how you feel about that. Mike is smiling, so you get to go first.
In my presentation, I mentioned the book that Niles and I both had read, and I think you've read. A lot of people read Race Against the Machines by Brynjolfsson and McAfee, and the original release was a fiction, right? And then they supported it with a new re-release about this is where we're going, and that's addressed in there. And obviously there are pros and cons in everything, and so the pro here is that having someone present to us information that's already important to us in terms of our consumption habits can be a good thing. Saves you time. And who doesn't like that? We can be more efficient and effective, right? The con is, who are the people that are handling the data and how responsible are they with what they do with it? And that's always the unknown for me.
Right.
But clearly there will be some wonderful benefits from it.
I mean, I'm enjoying the fact that I'm seeing Evan and Jania's pumpkin gutter pop up on my screen non-stop right now because Halloween's... Yeah, so Charlie, what do you think? Do you enjoy getting ads that are geared towards you or not?
Yeah, so I have no emotional attachment to it whatsoever, right? I choose what I feel and what I don't feel. I don't think it's scary. I think it's just real. I mean, it's the world in which we live in, right?
So you like all these shoe commercials coming at you right now?
That's not exactly how I put that, Marlo. Like is a strong word. I reserve those to a fine dish or maybe a, friendly companion, things like that. But this is not something that I have a like or dislike for. This is just the world in which we live in, right? I have a 6-year-old, and so I get an opportunity to watch closely and presently, what does it look like in his point of view, right? It's iPad. I mean, it's just digital, right?
Yep.
And the idea of me trying to take that away from him to I don't know what, but it's just not gonna work, right? This is just where they're at.
Yep.
I mean, I'm 42 years old. When I too am looking for a flip phone in decent condition, right? I'm not ready to make that transition, but I want it on the stock drawer. You know what I'm saying? But my reasons might be slightly different. But I know that Harrison, when he is 17, 20 years old, he's not going to make a choice between a combustible engine and electric vehicle. He's not going to make a choice between non-renewable energy and renewable energy. This is a world in which he will have embraced. And I believe that part of that for him and where he will be is based off the work that I do. So I believe in my product. And if I have to get my product and infiltrate that into the brains of others, I'm okay with that because I know that this is a product that's going to leave people and the world in a better place. And I think if we have a core understanding that that's the driving force in which we get up and do our deed and provide our widget to humanity, then I don't really care how it gets there. I want it there, right? And I don't really have any notions as to how it happens. I have been in this space a while, and a long time ago I realized, I did this sitting at a dining room table with homeowners discussing switching to solar power. And I said to them literally out loud that I have this feeling that as long as I don't punch you in the nose, you're going to go solar, right? And they both agreed. And I knew right then and there that it really has nothing to do with me. It's way bigger than me. And that kind of helps blind me to a degree and remove myself emotionally from the equation of, do I like the way that this works? Am I happy with the space in which 2020 is? Look, I've read 2 books in my life, Fear and Loathing from front to cover, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a spectrum in which I just let things be, right? But I do believe wholeheartedly in the product that I offer, that I don't frankly care how it gets in front of people.
I think one feature, and hopefully, well, they are listening, it would be nice you could just say to your device, I already bought the pair of shoes. Please stop advertising that to me now, right? So that would be cool. Kristin, your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of a little bit with Charlie. Like, I'm not really scared of it. It's just kind of, I see that's how we're going. But I do see that there could be some potential, like with your Fritos, maybe the ideal dip complement maker that makes this amazing, you know, guacamole that is perfect for that will pop up and it's like, hey, I didn't know about that. Or perhaps, you know, if you just bought a new, you know, boat, car, or Tesla, maybe there's some kind of new seat cover that appeals to your sense that could cut down some of your searches and really expedite your comfort, your efficiency in life. So there could be some pluses if it's targeted to complementary and synergistic energies.
So you're okay then with you know, that this is an opportunity for companies to actually really target their advertising with AI to find those little niches that are out there, you know, the 4.5 million people that have a Tesla now or what have you, to sell them those seat covers that are made by company X.
I think that opportunity exists, but I'm also with you. It would be nice if there was a feature to say, hey, I already bought those shoes and I'm good.
Yes, yeah. Should be just like a hot button on there or something, right?
Right.
All right, so we're going to change topics just a little bit to vehicles. You know, things are changing quickly in vehicles, and I actually think of a vehicle is going to be the new marketing opportunity of the next decade. Because when you're not forced to have to actually drive the vehicle, what other things are you going to be doing in that vehicle? And probably the number one thing is in front of a screen consuming something, right? So what kind of marketing opportunities do you think we have in the future in a vehicle? So Charlie, you're first this time.
Well, I think, you know, with the advancements in technology and clearly Tesla being, you know, the forefront of leading that tech, and with open patent, I can't imagine that we don't have a world in the next 5 years where we have abilities and options for autonomous driving. You know, but understand that, like, I've seen this. I remember when autonomous first came available to on a finite degree with Tesla. And I had a coworker who bought one, and he had in his mind factored this financially. These are expensive cars, relatively speaking, on the car side of it. Now, most people don't look at, like, you don't have a fuel bill, right? And there's really no moving parts in which one needs to service. So there's a longevity, right? This is a hedge when you buy Teslas versus a, you know, what can I get right now? Savings, right? And so in looking in that, his justification was that he'll be able to get more work done, because he'll be on the highway, and instead of having to hold the steering wheel, he can work. And really, I think that's why Elon decided to put autonomous vehicles in cars, because he just wanted that time back, right? I mean, that is obviously, like, that to me is the most precious commodity that we as humans have, is time.
Yep.
And if we can use that time, we have it made here. You know, I've driven all the highways and interstates that North Dakota has to offer. And what's 90 minutes to us, right? I mean, you just get in the car and go, right? But in some cases, that 90 minutes, man, if I drive to Jamestown and come back and then shoot up to Washburn or something like that, man, what could I do with that time, right? And then you just get humanity's juices flowing even more, and hopefully we get some good that comes out of it at the end of the day.
Yep. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I know that's one part of the emerging technology bucket that I'm really excited about, as you well know. And not when we started this summit, at that point in time, they thought, you know, it's really close. Could be 2022, 2025, and we've had some hiccups, and so it's a little bit further out there. And, you know, kind of to piggyback on what Charlie was saying, in North Dakota, autonomous driving would just be so welcome, so awesome, especially if you have to go from, like I have, Bismarck to Fargo on such a regular basis. And in our first summit, we had the vehicles where they had almost the holograms come into the doctor giving you a checkup, and you're checking this, you know, the stock market. You're reading a book. You're watching Netflix or whatever it is. All of a sudden, it isn't a wasted 3 hours. And I'm not saying that when I'm driving with my wife to Fargo, it's a waste of 3 hours, but my point is that there's so many other things that you could be doing with your time when that becomes a reality, and that would be awesome.
So do you see any type of marketing opportunities
Oh,
for
gosh,
companies?
yeah.
Or what do you envision? Just, just what would be at the top of that list, I guess, as far
Well,
as...
I get in the car and somebody's going to say, they're going to say, Mike, they're at mile marker 47, there's a bag of Fritos there. I mean, they're going to be able to do that very kind of thing.
Yes.
And some of it will be welcome, because not all marketing is not welcome, right? And so I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity. It's going to be not unlike what Dr. Parker was saying, that it's going to create more opportunities with the advancement of technologies, and this is a perfect example.
Yep. Kristin,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, I think with, I agree with the whole panel on this. I mean, I think it'll be an opportunity for, sort of exponential output. I mean, it'll just be like a compound interest of output. And I think that's going to be what's required, right? I mean, as innovation keeps advancing, it just keeps going in that compound interest type fashion. And it's frustrating, because I too have driven all around the whole state, and it feels like you're just sort of handcuffed to the steering wheel. It's such an opportunity that you could use to be doing all kinds of other work. And especially as other technologies advance, where we'll be able to have Wi-Fi in our cars and basically be connected throughout the journey. I think that the opportunities are great there. And that would be another marketing thing. So there'll be another company who will excel in providing wireless technologies that can travel, enhanced cellular capabilities so that your phone doesn't drop, so that you can maintain that productivity. And I think that the demand, as the world continues to advance, even developing nations, as they continue to advance, the demand is going to be there, where we're going to have to maximize on our time, because, as Charlie referenced, that is our most valuable commodity.
Well, there's no doubt that as we move forward, we'll have all kinds of opportunities for companies to actually emerge that will be in this space. So I know we have questions from the audience.
And I know we don't have a lot of time, and Charlie touched on this a little bit about, I want to go back to specific marketing that you all are doing. Charlie, with regards to your company, your solar energy company, and you talked mostly about you want somebody to just say, hey, I've got this, I know this guy. But Kristin, specifically, what are you doing to market your company, and how have you marketed your company over the years?
We've really worked to market our company. Largely, we had to start with just, being present. In the 80s, I mean, we had to drive out to Seattle, in the early 90s. And also, we have the great benefit too, and our company is a little bit different, but I think it's across the board, right? I heard that Congressman Armstrong has a staffer in the audience, and that's fantastic. We've got wonderful connectivity with our congressional delegation. Any company in North Dakota can, and that helps us to stand out with some of our prospective customers. But a lot of our marketing has been interpersonal connectivity, establishing a good relationship, which you got to get your foot in the door first, right? Which that's tough. But insofar as we can be creative and take some of the things that a lot of people on those coastal regions will look at and say, oh, well, what if you get snowed in? What if you can't get your product shipped? Or here's our concerns. We take that and flip it and say, but look at how solutions oriented we are. Look at how innovative we have to be by nature, and how rugged we are in the way that we'll provide excellence in product to you. And so that's kind of a branding technique that we've been able to work with. And what's cool is a lot of the other companies throughout the state have excelled in accommodating that very reputation too. So it sort of maximizes on each other. So we've been able to kind of grow, and it's neat to go to some of these tier one customers, and it is a little unique as a third generation setting too, because we work with some customers and they say, oh yeah, we know Killdeer. Of course, the name is different too, right? Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing. It's kind of like, well, what's this? But branding, relationships, and just genuine authenticity has been something that we've really been able to work with and excel with. So that's what I would say.
So, all right. All right. And do you want to have any last, I know we're running against the clock here, Charlie.
No, I won't. I don't need to take up any,
Okay,
any
okay.
additional time on
Mike,
that.
any last
Thank
words?
you.
I'm good.
All right. Kristin, Charlie, Mike, thank you so much for a very robust conversation. I know we're out of time, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again next year. Thanks, everybody, for attending this talk.
Thank you. That was really wonderful. We are the DisruptWell Summit 2020. We're broadcasting from the Bismarck Events Center, where we're talking about innovative disruptions that have caused innovation. And we've got a perfect example right downstairs. We're in the exhibition hall upstairs, and right downstairs out through the windows, I can see a drive-through COVID testing station happening right now here in Bismarck. So COVID has changed a lot of things, but one of the things that I find really intriguing and very heartening is that we have responded in a way that is very innovative, and that testing station is just one example. We have another innovation challenge video to share with you, and that will lead us into our lunch break. So roll tape.
Set Your Rent came about as we were trying to learn a little bit ourselves about the real estate investment process. But the one thing that as we were going through this, we noticed kind of a deficiency in available homes for people that couldn't quite obtain a bank loan. And so what we do is we raise private capital to buy the homes for them and then sell it back to them on a lease option or a contract for deed so that they can finally become a homeowner and use it as a bridge loan until they can refinance with the bank. A lot of the testimonials that we'll get on Facebook or on our Google reviews is, you know, the bank said no and Set Your Rent said yes. But we're kind of taking that service of people that are just tired of renting year to year, throwing their money away on rent. And so when they find us, they say, great, you know, it's finally my house. I finally own it, and I'm on my path towards the American dream through home ownership.
My favorite thing about our new home, I can do whatever I want. Like, I can paint if I want to, I could remodel if I wanted to, and just the fact that it's mine.
Allow you to go shopping for any home that you want. With us, you know, you could find any home on the MLS or for sale by owner. When we're at the closing table and you hand someone a key and they're like, you know, we would have been renting, we would have been kicked out of our place, and now we finally have our home. And I will admit that I've gotten tears and I've gotten hugs. We think that is the best way about going about business.
Thank you. You get a break now. We're going to come back at 12:15 with our keynote, so take a moment, go ahead and have some lunch, and we'll see you at 12:15.